If you ask me, the future of Port Charles is about to be violently disrupted by a collision of international espionage, corporate greed, and a family secret so devastating that it will leave permanent scars on multiple generations. We need to stop looking at the current mysteries as isolated incidents and start looking at the massive, interconnected web that is about to trap some of our favorite characters in a nightmare they never saw coming. Let us set the current board very quickly so we know exactly where all the major players are standing. Right now, Jocelyn is riding an incredible high, deeply embedded in the WSB after striking a massive, risky deal with Director Z to free Jason and Valentine. She is proving herself as a highly capable, albeit reckless operative who believes she is untouchable after taking down Ross Cullum. Meanwhile, we have Hudson, this incredibly mysterious and wealthy business executive who just touched down in town, actively hunting for Ethan or the late Delilah. Carly is completely distracted by her complicated romance with Valentine and Sunny's constant, overbearing meddling in her personal life. And then there is Jasper Jax, who remains far away from the canvas, seemingly disconnected from the daily chaos of upstate New York. The pieces are all perfectly arranged in their starting positions, but the game is about to shift into a dangerous new gear, and the board is going to be flipped completely upside down. Looking ahead, the first potential future we need to examine is a pure, high-stakes espionage thriller that puts Jocelyn right in the crosshairs of a deadly predator. What happens next may be a direct WSB assignment handed down by Z himself. Z knows Jocelyn is hungry to prove herself, and Hudson is exactly the kind of high-profile, shadowy target the agency loves to monitor. In this scenario, Jocelyn goes deep undercover to investigate the dark, hidden crimes within Hudson's corporate empire, specifically focusing on his mysterious connection to Delilah. But here is the terrifying twist. Hudson is not just a shady businessman. He is a ruthless apex predator who operates 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He figures out Jocelyn's true identity as a WSB agent before she even realizes her cover has been blown. This could lead to Hudson making a swift, preemptive strike to silence her permanently and tie up all his loose ends. Imagine the sheer panic when Jocelyn simply vanishes without a trace, leaving behind only a cryptic clue or a discarded WSB tracker. In this future, the person who benefits most is Hudson, as he eliminates a major threat to his syndicate and secures his illegal operations. The person in the most immediate mortal danger is obviously Jocelyn, who finds herself subjected to brutal interrogation by a man who has no moral boundaries. This path would fundamentally change Jocelyn's trajectory. It would completely shatter her invincibility complex, forcing her to realize that the spy game is not a thrilling adventure, but a deadly reality where one mistake costs you your life. Furthermore, it would force the WSB to launch a massive, chaotic manhunt that tears Port Charles apart, bringing federal agents into direct conflict with the local police and the local underworld. But we have to look deeper, guys, because the writers rarely give us a straightforward spy story without a massive personal twist. There is a chance that the story could be heading toward a completely different future, one where the WSB is entirely irrelevant to the real underlying motive. What if Hudson's arrival and Jocelyn's subsequent disappearance trigger the return of the one man who knows all the secrets? I am talking about Jasper Jax. In this second future, Jax hears the devastating news about his daughter's disappearance and flies back to Port Charles like a hurricane of vengeance. But the massive twist here is that Jax already knows exactly who Hudson is and what he is truly capable of. Imagine a scenario where Jax, being a global corporate raider himself, has been secretly monitoring Hudson for years. If that happens, Jax's return is not just a desperate rescue mission, it is a frantic attempt to contain a monster he indirectly allowed to roam free. Jax might have known about Hudson's dark corporate crimes, but kept his mouth shut to protect his own business interests or to protect someone else in his inner circle. This changes the entire dynamic of the narrative. It is no longer just Jocelyn versus a criminal mastermind, it is Jax going to war against his own guilt. He would use all of his immense wealth, private security forces, and global connections to dismantle Hudson's operation before Hudson realizes who he is truly messing with. This would completely alter the power structure of Port Charles, bringing Jax back not as a romantic foil for Carly or a voice of reason, but as a ruthless, dangerous patriarch willing to cross absolutely any moral line, legal or illegal, to save his beloved daughter. Now, let us venture into the most unpredictable, mind-blowing possibility. This is the third future, the wild card that very few people are anticipating, but it would completely shatter the foundation of the show and rewrite decades of history. What if Hudson is not just a random corporate villain sent to challenge the WSB? What if Hudson is actually Carly's long-lost son? Think about the sheer narrative symmetry and the devastating emotional weight of that revelation. Carly lost Morgan, a tragedy that still haunts her every waking moment and dictates her overprotective behavior toward Jocelyn. Now, imagine she has a biological son out there, completely unknown to her, perhaps from a secret pregnancy during her troubled early years before she came to Port Charles, who has grown up to be a hardened, dangerous criminal. In this scenario, Hudson kidnaps Jocelyn to silence her investigation into his illegal operations, completely unaware that he is torturing and holding his own biological half-sister hostage. The dramatic irony is absolutely off the charts. The bigger consequence may be the psychological destruction of Carly when she finds out. She and Jax would have to team up to find their daughter, only for Jax to drop the ultimate bombshell right at the climax of the desperate rescue mission. Jax, who might have discovered this dark secret years ago and buried it deep to spare Carly the unimaginable pain of knowing her flesh and blood became a monster, is finally forced to confess. Picture the cinematic intensity of that scene. Jax kicking down the door of a dark abandoned warehouse, a gun pointed squarely at Hudson's chest, screaming at the top of his lungs that the battered girl tied to the chair is his own sister. This path turns a standard, run-of-the-mill WSB kidnapping plot into a devastating Greek tragedy. Every single character's heart is ripped out, and the clear lines between hero and villain are permanently blurred. Hudson is suddenly faced with the horrifying reality that he has been terrorizing his own family, while Carly is forced to confront the living embodiment of her past mistakes holding a gun to her daughter's head. If you ask me, the path that feels most likely is exactly this breathtaking, heartbreaking family twist. I keep coming back to the idea that General Hospital operates at its absolute best when massive global stakes are anchored by deeply personal, soapy family drama. Having Jocelyn simply fight a random bad guy is standard WSB procedural stuff. It is exciting, but it lacks emotional resonance. But having her fight her own secret brother, that is pure daytime television gold. The trajectory of Jocelyn's character has been heading toward a massive, humbling fall for months. She is far too confident, far too deeply entrenched in Z's dangerous world without truly understanding the horrifying cost of the spy game. Hudson, being Carly's son, perfectly bridges the gap between the high-octane corporate espionage storyline and the core emotional beats of the Corinthos and Jax families. It gives Jax the ultimate dramatic reason to return to the canvas. He doesn't just come back as a concerned dad. He comes back as a man holding a ticking time bomb of a secret, knowing that his silence has put his daughter in mortal danger. It also pushes Carly to her absolute breaking point. She has been crying by Jocelyn's hospital bed, begging her to leave the WSB to avoid losing another child. This storyline would force Carly into an impossible nightmare, making her choose between the daughter she raised and loves fiercely and the son she never knew, but still shares a profound biological bond with. It is the exact kind of impossible, soul-crushing choice that defines legendary soap opera arcs. But we cannot just stop there, because the future always extends further, and the ripples of this secret would be felt for years. If that scenario happens, and Jax reveals the truth to Hudson in the heat of the moment to save Jocelyn's life, what is the next shockwave? If Hudson actually believes Jax, the story takes an even wilder, more complicated turn. Suddenly, Hudson has to pivot instantly from being Jocelyn's cold-blooded captor to being her fierce protector. He would have to turn his entire criminal empire against his own shadowy associates to ensure his newly discovered sister survives the mess he created. This could lead to Hudson becoming a massive target himself. The very forces and syndicates he used to control would turn their guns on him for showing weakness and compromising their operations. And what about Carly? How does a mother reconcile with a son who nearly killed her daughter How does she hide a wanted dangerous criminal from the WSB and the PCPD just to keep her fractured family intact? How does Jocelyn look at the man who terrorized her, knowing they share the same blood and that he sacrificed his empire to save her? Looking ahead, this dynamic could fuel years of incredible storytelling. Hudson could easily become the new dark antihero of Port Charles, constantly struggling between his ingrained criminal nature and his desperate newfound desire to earn the love and trust of a family he never knew he had. The story could be heading toward a massive civil war within the Port Charles underworld, with Jax and Carly forced to form an unholy alliance, lying to the authorities and even to Sonny just to keep Hudson alive. The possibilities are truly endless, and the emotional fallout will reshape the entire landscape of the show forever.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.